let's get something straight right away here. There is a real life Bane. That's right, the man is real. So anyone down in the comments saying that in real life you can't get massive and develop bone shattering strength like Bane, they're dead wrong. But there's a bit of a trick to it, and spoiler alert, it's not that gimmick called power building. To understand how Bane would train in real life so that we can get big and strong like him, we first need to understand his backstory. Because it's like the philosopher Archimedes once said, give me a steroid strong enough, a gimp suit weird enough, and a backstory tragic enough to get the whole thing started, and I shall break the bat. Bane is from a small island in the Caribbean called Santa Prisca, which around the time of his birth was getting rocked by a bunch of revolutionaries who were unsurprisingly trying to revolutionize the place. Bane's dad was one of these revolutionaries, and Bane's mom unfortunately neglected rule number 1 of sleeping with a revolutionary: always use protection. So a unexpected yet predictable miracle of course happened, and Bane's mom got pregnant with little baby Bane. Yay! But then Bane's dad got executed by the local government for all the revolutionizing. Aww. Then Bane's mom had to serve out his life sentence in prison. Aww. Then little baby Bane was born in prison. Yay! Then his mom, she got fed to the sharks. Aww. From here, Bane almost got diddled, and then he killed the diddler. He got smart, he got jacked, and then he got too jacked, so he became a threat, and they tried to kill him using an experimental steroid called Venom. That kind of backfired. He got way more jacked, so jacked in fact, that he escaped Santa Prisca. He headed over to Gotham, hit the sex shop on the way, and once he got to Gotham, he started snapping trust fund kids in half, like the last frickin' Pringle in the tube, son. Yay! So that's Bane. He's jacked, highly intelligent, insanely strong, and hooked on anabolic steroids. So he's pretty much just the average member of my Discord server, which by the way, is the most anabolic place since Trenbolone Tuesdays at Gold's Gym on Venice Beach. So click the link in the description to join, and don't miss out on those sweet, sweet free gains. Now that we understand Bane, let's dive into how he would train to get big and strong in real life as quickly as possible, so that you can learn to do the same, but without the steroids and the gimp mask. Oh, and the trust fund kid snapping is also optional, but highly encouraged. But oh man, how are we ever gonna figure out how this steroid abusing monster of a man would train in real life? After all, there's no one like him who actually exists, right?
With our health. And I'm talking about those of us who abuse PEDs. And I have been abusing them for 10 years straight now. I started PEDs when I was 17, okay?
Oh, well, I guess he'll work. Everybody welcome to the screen, Larry Wheels. A 6'1", 275-pound powerlifter and bodybuilder, well known for his world record strength feats, insane physique, his steroid use, and for absolutely destroying the bodies of anybody who is brave enough to train with him. Geez, that one's gotta hurt. If you're wondering why all these men are getting hurt while training with Larry, I'm actually going to explain it later in the video. But for now, to find out exactly how Bane would have to train to take himself from this to this, let's take a look at how Larry Wheels has trained from day one to become the mass monster he is today. Ever since Larry Wheels started lifting as a teenager, he always knew that he wanted to get into powerlifting and he wanted to throw around some massive weights. See, this is how it goes for most teenagers when they decide that they want to get really strong. They get too hyped up on a mix of pre-workout, hardstyle music, and powerlifting montages. They go into the gym and start maxing out their deadlifts on day one with heavy sets of 1, 2, or 3, and then they do their best impression of a scared cat. Or even worse, God forbid, they fall for the training trap called power building, but I'll shit on that more later. But see, Larry, he took a much smarter approach.
Okay, when I first started out, I knew I wanted to be a powerlifter, but I also read up and I knew that you need a strong base before you can start putting whatever amount of weight you want on your back and in your hands.
Larry spent about 2 years training specifically to build a solid foundation of muscle. He'd head down into his basement almost every day. He'd blast some BTS at max volume. At least, I assume that's what he was listening to. And then he'd crank out tons of sets and reps of bicep curls, floor presses, and overhead presses, all with cinder blocks. Which was a smart move, as it's been scientifically proven that cinder blocks are actually pound for pound heavier than iron. Fun fact. But Larry wouldn't just hit the weights. He took a page out of Bane's blood-soaked book, and he also would do all kinds of bodyweight movements like push-ups, pull-ups, and chin-ups. But Larry's ultimate goal was to get as strong as possible. So why didn't he just start training for max strength right off the bat by loading up the weights and doing heavy sets of 1 to 5, like we see all the high-level powerlifters, Olympic weightlifters, and strongmen doing? Well, the thing is, how you should be training for size and strength as a beginner is very different than how you should be training for these goals as someone who is more advanced. As a beginner who's very new to lifting, all you need to do to drastically increase your strength is some basic bodybuilding style work, just like Larry did during the first couple years of his lifting career. Here's the funny thing, it's actually really ironic that people are afraid to start lifting, because it's during your first year of training that you'll see the easiest and fastest gains of your entire lifting career. What people should really be afraid of is their 10th year of consistent lifting, where you can train 7 days a week, eat nothing but chicken, rice, and the freeze-dried sweat of LeBron James, and avoid all contact with females out of fear that their low testosterone status might rub off on you. On year 10, you can do all that and more for 12 months straight, and still only end up looking like 3% better than you did at the start of the year. Now that's terrifying. But my complaining aside, your first year of lifting is about more than just building size and strength. It's about laying a rock-solid foundation that you'll be able to build upon for years to come. And let's say you figure, well, I'm a big, strong man, I don't need to build this kind of foundation, and you skip straight to doing the super heavy, strength-specific work we see strongmen and athletes doing, then you're going to enjoy a long career full of years of nagging injuries, plateaus in your progress, frustration, and generally just being small. So don't be a waste of protein powder. Check out this overview of what this type of foundational strength building program looks like. But you know what? I'll do you guys better than just an overview. Stick around till the end of the video and I'll give you a free, fully detailed 10-week Bane-inspired foundational strength training program so that you can have the perfect start to your lifting career. Hopefully that shows you just how much I care. Now please show me how much you care by hitting that like button. Okay, so this foundational phase of training has 3 goals. Number 1, build a bunch of muscle mass. The more muscle mass you have, the more potential you have for developing large amounts of strength. This is why weight classes are a thing in sports. Sure, having more muscle than someone doesn't always mean you'll be stronger than them, but if you took 2 people who both train for strength, but one of them has more muscle than the other, the more muscular lifter will almost always be stronger than the one with less muscle. And that's why my dad could beat up your dad, because my dad is jacked. Goal number 2 of this phase of training is to dial in your technique. To build muscle, you need to train using a lot of sets and reps, and this type of training is amazing for improving your lifting technique, simply because more sets and reps means more opportunities to work on and improve your technique. So the more reps you do each week as a beginner, the faster your lifting technique will improve. Now down the line, to continue improving, you will need to specifically practice with heavy weights, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Now goal number 3 of this program is to make your body injury proof. This muscle building training is also amazing for creating stronger and more injury resistant tendons, joints, and connective tissues, which if you're lucky, will keep you safe from the curse of Larry Wheels. A lot of you have probably experienced the number 1 fastest way to kill your gains, which is getting injured. So if you want to make progress as quickly as possible, you need to take time to bulletproof your body against injury. Okay, so step 1 to becoming Bane in real life is building a solid foundation of muscle. But what's next? You're probably asking, Paris, when do we start injecting experimental green steroids into our necks? Well, that's a good question, but joke's on you guys, because I've been injecting them into my neck this whole video. But okay, for real. Once again, the answer lies with Mr. Wheels. Oh shit, not that Mr. Wheels. Ah yes, that's the one. At the age of 17, Larry started blasting large amounts of steroids into his veins. I imagine these steroids were administered via 2 massive glass vials that he would wear on his back, but this is mere speculation. Larry started blasting around the same time that he switched his training from this foundational muscle building phase into his more strength-focused plan, but more on that in a second. Now, while the fact that Larry got himself an express one-way ticket to the corner of Gaines Avenue and Small Testicles Road might make him the perfect real-world example of how Bane would train, his steroid use might also make you think that we natural lifters can't look at his training for ideas on how we should be training. But that isn't exactly true. Most people who take large doses of steroids still need to follow the same basic training rules as people who train naturally. But the main difference is everything is essentially just scaled up. It's like leveling up in a video game. At level 1, you level up by killing goblins with 10 hit points. And then at level 100, you level up by killing slightly different looking goblins, but this time with 1,000 hit points each. The process stays the same, but the numbers just get much higher. And the same is generally true for enhanced lifters. Enhanced lifters still need to train close to failure, they still need to do around the same amount of volume as unenhanced lifters, and they still need to pay attention to their diet and recovery. But the main difference between a natural lifter and an enhanced lifter is that the enhanced lifter has a lot more muscle and is much stronger. Well, that and the cystic acne, the mood swings.
Guys, how many times do I need to tell you? Steroids does not cause any anger. Shut the up! I'm shooting a video!
The high blood pressure and the funeral at 35. But mostly they're bigger and stronger. But while being big and strong might sound sick, I mean, that's why we're all here, right? It actually makes training a lot more difficult and a lot more dangerous in some cases. Because guys like Larry Wheels, Bane, and Sam Sulek are so strong, they need to lift using a ton of weight in order to push their muscles hard enough to trigger them to grow. But this can actually get really dangerous because in a way, these enhanced athletes are kind of too strong for their own bodies. See, anabolic steroids make your muscles grow and get stronger really quickly, but they don't make your tendons and connective tissues grow and strengthen at the same rate, which leaves enhanced lifters at a much greater risk of injury. This is why you see so many videos of huge, jacked-ass bodybuilders literally ripping their muscles off of their fucking bones while lifting really heavy weights. Exhibit A is the Larry Wheels curse. Except for when he fucking broke that guy's arm wrestling him. I think that was just like bad luck and weak forearm bones. But with these jacked bodybuilders, the tendons that connect their muscles to their bones simply aren't strong enough to handle all the force being created by their muscles, so they just rip right off the bone, which is pretty fucking metal if you ask me, but also probably not something that would feel that good. This is 100% an oversimplification of the differences between training as an enhanced lifter and a natural lifter, but the point here is that the two types of training aren't as different as some people might think. Now back to Mr. Wheels. Once Larry finished building his foundation, he switched up his training and went from training almost every day to only training 3 days a week. And at the same time, he also did way less overall training volume. But he cranked up his training intensity and started primarily doing heavy sets of 1 to 5 on the squat, bench, and deadlift. He made this change to his training because to continue to make fast progress as a more intermediate athlete, you can't just keep doing basic, general bodybuilding training. You need to gear your training specifically towards the type of results you want. This is why we see football players doing power cleans to improve their explosive power, powerlifters doing heavy squats to increase their max strength, and bodybuilders training 6 days a week while doing a ton of training volume to build more muscle. All these forms of training might look pretty similar and they might all use weights, but the way the programs are structured will dictate the aspect of human performance that they improve. Typically, athletes won't just stick to one form of weight training all year round, and they'll cycle between different training styles so that they can continue to improve their performance across the board year after year. With Larry, for example, he'll cycle back and forth between doing max strength powerlifting training and high volume bodybuilding training depending on the time of year and what competition he has coming up. But that's not the only cycle he's doing, if you know what I'm saying.
You naughty.
Haha. Anyways, so just like Larry did, once Bane had built his foundation of muscle, he would cycle back and forth between doing 8 to 12 week muscle building phases and 8 to 12 week strength building phases. By the way, I was also going to create 2 free 12-week strength and muscle building focused programs for this video, but I'm actually going to be covering these topics more in depth in my Becoming Batman series in the episodes on how Batman would train for muscle and train for strength. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss those videos and those free programs. Speaking of Batman, you know what makes him so badass? It's his super suit. I mean, just look at that guy. And that's why I need to tell you about SuperX, the sponsor of today's video. SuperX are the creators of the world's most highest quality and most badass superhero-inspired workout gear on the market. They have designs based off all your favorite superheroes and villains, plus official collabs with brands like the Power Rangers and huge fitness influencers like Mike O'Hearn. All their products are super high quality and well made, but to keep the quality high, all their designs are made in very limited runs. So if you see something that you like, you need to act fast before they sell out. Go check them out by using the link down below in the description and use code Demers for a discount and so that they know I sent you. Now back to it. I'm sure a lot of you are asking, why couldn't Bane just do power building and train for both size and strength at the same time? For those of you who don't know, over the past decade or so, people online have been pushing a training style called power building, where the goal is to get really big and really strong at the same time. You train like a powerlifter for the first half of your workout, doing low rep heavy lifts. And then you train like a bodybuilder for the second half of your workout, doing a large number of high rep sets. Sounds great, right? Who doesn't want to get much bigger and much stronger at the same time? Power building is easy to understand, doesn't require much long-term planning, and is supported by a ton of super cool fitness influencers like Bradley Martin and Larry Wheels himself. The only problem is power building doesn't actually really work, at least not nearly as well as the alternative. The issue with power building is that to get really strong, you need to lift really heavy weights. Makes sense, right? But to lift really heavy weights, you need to be fairly fresh and recovered going into each session, which means that you can't be doing a crazy amount of total training volume each week. Because as your amount of total training volume goes up, so does fatigue. And the more fatigued you are, the harder it's going to be to lift really heavy weights. But on the other hand, to build a lot of muscle, you need to be doing a lot of volume each week. And of course, this means a lot of extra fatigue that would limit the kinds of weights that you're going to be able to lift during the max strength portions of your workouts. So it's a bit of a catch-22, and in this case, you're in fact not able to have your cake and eat it too. You can either train heavy enough to get super strong, or train with enough volume that you'll build a lot of muscle, but it's hard to do both at the same time. Unless, again, like we talked about earlier, you're in your first year or so of training. Then you can pretty much just look at a barbell and you'll get much stronger and much bigger. But even in the case that you're new, power building still isn't what you want to be doing. Because like we talked about earlier, you don't need to be maxing out and doing heavy sets of 1, 2, or 3 to build strength as a newbie. You just need to be lifting consistently. So you can see how doing a lot of strength-focused training and a lot of muscle-focused training at the same time can actually interfere with each other. And that's why power building isn't actually the best way to train if you want to develop a lot of size and strength in the long run. This is again the exact reason why in real life, Bane would follow the 3-step plan I laid out earlier. He'd build his foundation, then he would cycle back and forth between doing phases of training where he focuses on strength and phases of training where he focuses on building more muscle. Now, during this whole video, I've been comparing Bane to Larry Wheels, but there is one huge difference between the two. They're training to become different types of strong. When Larry was training to become strong, it was so that he could squat, bench, and deadlift as much weight as possible. But when Bane is training to become strong, it's so that he can squat to pick up Batman, bench press him off a 10-story building, and then deadlift his lifeless body off the pavement below. What I'm trying to say is that Bane would need to train to become strong in the context of hand-to-hand combat, not just in the context of a powerlifting competition. Now, Bane could simply train the squat, bench, and deadlift, and this would make him very strong, but training this way would leave him at a distinct disadvantage when facing off against someone like Batman, who focuses specifically on doing the type of strength work that will translate better to a no-rules fight in the streets of Gotham. Here are some examples of these more combat-focused strength movements. Heavy single or double-handed farmer's carries to build huge grip strength so that once you have your hands on your opponent, they can't escape. Heavy kettlebell swings for explosive hip strength needed to tackle your opponents to the ground. Barbell bent over rows for a huge stable back and powerful lats that'll allow you to crush your opponents once you get a hold of them. Landmine rotations and rotational single arm landmine presses to build the rotational strength needed to throw a bone-shattering punch. And finally, the most effective exercise: watching your parents get murdered right in front of you. You wouldn't really think that last one would improve your athletic performance that much, but Batman benches like 1,000 pounds, so the results kind of speak for themselves. Doing these more dynamic strength movements would also help Bane improve his overall athleticism, which is obviously very important in a fight. However, Bane wouldn't need to focus nearly as much on his athleticism and endurance as someone like Batman. Bane is able to rely on his massive size and unmatched strength, which allows him to easily tank his opponent's attacks until he's able to get his hands on them, at which point they're done for. But for those of you who are interested in learning more about how you can increase your athleticism, strength, and power output in order to improve your combat abilities, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my upcoming Becoming Batman episodes, because I'm going to be taking a deep dive into all that kind of stuff. Now, I'll definitely be talking more about Bane in the future because there's so much more to explore with this character. But for now, go click the link in the description or in the pinned comment to get access to the free 10-week Big Like Bane beginner strength building program. It's being hosted on the free science-based training app Boostcamp, which does have a paid version, but you can access my program and all the other ones on the app 100% for free. Clicking this link also helps support the channel, so I really appreciate it. Now that you have your training program, go check out the first episode of my Becoming Batman series, where I go in depth on what Batman's diet would look like in real life and how you can eat to maximize your physical and mental performance. See you guys there.